So folks, yes, we are trying to go out there and clear the table. We want to make sure that all these videos of trade details getting finalized are actually immortalized in video format, so we don't leave any stone unturned as we put an end to the 2024 draft season. So, without further ado, we are referring to yet another one of these trades the Montreal Canadiens had made in the past year, and how everything is now complete. Today, we're going back to July of 2023, free agency of 1 year ago, where the Montreal Canadiens made a pretty big trade, sending away a defenseman who played a pretty big part on the team's Stanley Cup final run. Today we're talking about the Joel Edmundson trade. Now, Edmundson to me does have a little bit of an important part in my fandom as a Montreal Canadiens fan. He's 31 years old, 6'5", 225, left-handed guy. Right now he is signed on to a $3.85 million contract with the LA Kings, which is a lot. I'm kind of confused as to how he was able to get that money, but I guess big shot-blocking dude is gonna big shot-blocking dude, right? He played for the Montreal Canadiens for 3 seasons, 2020-2021, all the way to 2022-2023, and made his presence known as a member of the Canadiens' blue line that made the Stanley Cup Finals in 2021. He was a big dude, he paired very nicely with Jeff Petrie. Alongside of Weber and Sherratt, the Montreal Canadiens had a D-core that was just immovable. All 4 guys were big, strong, and very tough to move off the puck. Honestly, it feels like yesterday. The Habs had 4 titans all on their blue line that quickly faded away. I mean, Ben Sherratt no longer on the team, Jeff Petrie no longer on the team, Weber is never playing hockey again, and Edmundson left too shortly after, but all these guys were big, solid guys, and the Habs had a playoff run for the ages. Man, I'm getting a little sentimental just thinking about it. But either way, Joel Edmundson was an important part of this Canadiens blue line for a few years, posting up 2 13-point seasons before getting traded on July 1st. He got sent over to Washington, played 44 games, had 6 points, then got sent over to Toronto to end off the season over there, where he had 9 regular season games and 0 points. He then had 1 point in the Maple Leafs' 7-game loss against the Boston Bruins. Edmundson then became a free agent and signed the contract that he has right now, which I do believe is an overpay. I mean, the LA Kings, I kind of want to talk about them a little bit later in today's show. I don't know if we're going to get around to that, but if we don't, then I apologize. They've gotten themselves a few guys in this offseason that you could very well say are questionable, and Joel Edmundson at $3.85 million a year is definitely one of them. You could maybe say, oh, if it wasn't LA, it was going to be some other team that was going to overpay for this dude. But the fact is, the Kings did it, so we have the right to go out there and talk about him like this. Either way, let's revisit the trade which sent Edmundson from Montreal to Washington and go over how this trade return has been finalized. On July 1st, 2023, the Washington Capitals acquired Joel Edmundson with $1.75 million of salary retained, so 50%, in exchange for a 2024 third-round pick from Minnesota and a 2024 7th-round pick from themselves. These draft picks ended up becoming 78th overall and 210th overall. Before we dive into the picks, though, let's just illuminate what happened with Edmundson and the contract. $1.75 million salary retained means that he was only on the payroll for $1.75 mil, period. Pretty reasonable, I'll say, for a player with this kind of a talent profile. The Maple Leafs then acquired Edmundson with 50% salary retained again. So if you take the $1.75 million and divide that by 2, he was making a whopping, what is that, $875,000 against the Maple Leafs cap? Yeah, 1.75 is okay for Edmundson, 800K is a lot better. That's a huge deal for a guy like him in Toronto. But the Habs ended up getting 2 draft picks. If you go over to the 78th overall pick in the 2024 NHL Draft, you'll see that the Montreal Canadiens ended up selecting Logan Sawyer, a left wing out of the Brooks Bandits in the AJHL. We already made a video about Sawyer when he was drafted, but as a Providence College NCAA player, he's a lot more of an energy kind of winger, a guy who can play versatile minutes throughout the bottom 6, and a player who presents a pretty consistent level of talent across the board. He's alright at passing, he's alright at shooting, maybe not the best skater and puck handler, but his hockey sense and physical game are also alright too. He's got a high motor, and he's willing to fight the fight. Definitely not somebody that could project as a top-tier prospect, but as maybe a C+ or a B- tier guy, who maybe one day could be a bottom 6 player, Logan Sawyer isn't the worst option in the world. Now, you can be a little bit concerned as to his production, because he did have 59 points in 39 games with the AJHL, that's awesome, but only 19 points in 20 BCHL games, barely being a point per game in the BCHL Junior A League. That's not necessarily the best, but I guess with a third-round pick, you can't really go wrong. Plus, the Canadiens had so many other guys taken throughout the draft that exhibit also pretty good talent too, that if you like a guy, you just take a swing on him, no matter where he is in the draft. Pretty much after the second half of the second round, you kind of just go with whomever it is that you like, and the draft order will fix itself up after that. Logan Sawyer, though, is going over to Providence College. We'll see how his development continues over the next 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how long it takes for him to sign and become a pro hockey player. But for Logan Sawyer, this definitely is another one of these energy guys that the Habs have in their system. Now, let's go over to the second pick that the Montreal Canadiens received in this trade. It was the 210th overall pick from the Washington Capitals. Now, with this pick, if you scroll down on the Wikipedia page, you'll see that the Canadiens ended up selecting a really interesting guy. They took Makar Cayden from HC Dynamo St. Petersburg in the MHL. Now, we made a video about Makar Cayden as well, but he's 19 years old, so an overage player from the draft, undersized right-wing, right-handed guy. 7th round, 210th overall, who is now playing in the VHL and the MHL. Things are going pretty weirdly for Makar Cayden and his overall profile, considering the fact that he's still bouncing around different leagues. In Dynamo St. Petersburg in the VHL, he had 0 points in 2 games, and in the MHL with MHK Dynamo Moscow, he had 1 goal in 1 game played. Not necessarily the best production out of a guy who was already producing pretty well last year, but he's only played 3 games, so I don't really think it's too fair to compare him all the way. Anyways, when it comes to Makar Cayden, he was mostly defined at the draft as more of just a skilled Russian scorer. We see these guys pop up every now and then that are worth taking a look at. They've got skill, they've got handles, they've got abilities, and on the rare case that you get one of these guys that actually does pan out and plays an NHL game in his career, it's seen as a win, because it's a 7th round guy. What else do you want? However, I will say there has been some controversy about Makar Cayden posted on different parts of social media over the past few days here. We've seen some people asking, hey, what's going on? Why is he not playing? Is there a chance that he's gotten called up? Is he actually on any of these rosters? It's been difficult, really, to track most of the MHL and VHL progress for Canadiens prospects. But for Makar Cayden, I mean, 7th round guy, you don't really have too much of an eye on these players anyway, until they find themselves on a bigger stage with a bigger team and a bigger spotlight. Then it becomes easier to keep track of everything and try to pay attention to what's going on here. So, for Makar Cayden, he's a prospect that definitely has a long and treacherous path to go through if he wants to become an NHL dude, but paired alongside of Logan Sawyer, this is a pretty okay to maybe subpar trade return for what Joel Edmundson was with the Montreal Canadiens. He got traded a year before his contract was going to expire, so the Capitals and the Maple Leafs held on for him for that season. The Maple Leafs, though, ended up using him towards the end of his contract in the playoffs. He was okay, but not really the best, and then he signed a big deal with LA. Meanwhile, Montreal is walking away with 2 prospects that are interesting, not guaranteed steals or anything, not elite franchise generational talents, but they're interesting. And at the end of the day, I think it's a fun trivia piece of knowledge to note that either of these 2 guys, Logan Sawyer and Makar Cayden, if they actually do make the NHL one day, they would have been a part of the Montreal Canadiens organization because of the Joel Edmundson trade on July 1st, 2023. So, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Edmundson trade and everything in between, how all of these details have finally gotten confirmed, and what are your thoughts on these prospects and the picks that the Montreal Canadiens made? Do you think these were the right picks to make at the time? Was there anybody else you would have rather seen the Habs take in this draft position? I mean, it's tough to go out there and project what the Canadiens could have done with the 78th and 210th overall picks, but cooler heads can prevail. Let's have a conversation about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.